It's now my pleasure to turn things over to Yesh Ballon. So, in case you guys didn't have an opportunity to read all about Yesh and his story, I want to share this with you. So, Yesh's mother died 2 days before 9/11, as we were talking about before, and always an iconoclast. Which I got to tell you, Yesh, like this is the most amazing thing because I've been saying your mother's name. I've been saying your mother's name for almost a decade. And to finally get to know her as a person beyond being a name, to me is pure magic. It is absolutely sacred. So I'm so grateful to you. I love to know that she was an iconoclast. That even in death, Jean Himson Ballon found a way to make things more interesting than they had to be. With air travel halted, the rituals for honoring and mourning her death were upended, propelling her family into chaos, conflict, and deeper grief. Unthinkable Dreams, the year that Mom died and the towers fell, is the name of Yesh's book. And it's the chronicle of the drama, discoveries, and occasional delights that one family experienced in the months before and after their matriarch's death. An important part of this journey was discovering how to listen to their dying mother speak when much of her words made little rational sense. Yesh Ballon describes the surprising emergence of his mother's spirituality, how his relationship with her blossomed, even as her body and mind withered, and how this connected to his own spiritual journey. As he probes this difficult time, he opens his heart and demonstrates how embracing compassion can move people from separation to connection, everybody. Even though the route is neither straight nor continuous. Above all, Unthinkable Dreams is a book about healing and a model for harvesting from the past in order to plant seeds and leave a legacy for the future. A little bit about Yesh. Yeshaya Douglas Ballon is a spiritual mentor, teacher, artist, and retired architect. He received certification from Aleph, the Alliance for Jewish Renewal, as a Mashpia Ruchani, a spiritual director, which means you really want to talk to this guy because he knows some things about some things. And as a Vatik, a saging mentor. He is editor and author of A Precious Heritage, the Rabbinical Reflections on God, Judaism, and the World in the Turbulent 20th Century, selected sermons by Rabbi Sidney Ballon. So without further ado, it is absolutely an honor and it is absolutely a privilege. And it is absolutely a pleasure, Yesh, to have you with us this evening and to welcome you back into Temple Beth Tefilloh that has been long awaiting your return. Thank you, Yesh.
Thank you, Rabbi Bregman. That's a lot to live up to. Certainly, there's a lot that you described that we won't go into in the next 10 minutes, but I think you're on target. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. It's an honor just to be here in this congregation that our family has held dear for many years. So thank you for that privilege. I'll be speaking this evening about memory, compassion, forgiveness, all components of Shuvah on this Shabbat Shuvah, the Sabbath of return. Unfortunately, the memories I'll begin with are unpleasant, as we've already spent some time thinking about them. Tomorrow, as we're all too aware, marks the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Yesterday, 9/9, marked the 20th anniversary of my mother's death. And the proximity of these two events had a profound effect on our family. I've described this in the book. And on September 11, 2001, despite the hijackings being thousands of miles away from where we were, they nonetheless had a jarring and immediate impact on our family's mourning process. I wrote the following in my journal on September 11th. In the evening, Becca, that's my daughter, and I attend a memorial service, a gathering of 4 area synagogues. It's a moving program of poetry and song, an opportunity for community grieving. An elder from our temple offers me condolences. I try to describe the struggle I feel, juxtaposing my personal grief with this unfathomable tragedy. He means no harm in his response. It comes out wrong, though, when he suggests that mom's passing is insignificant in the face of the death and destruction rendered by the terrorists. I offer that my grief is not insignificant, just different. Without today's horror, a mother's death alone would provide ample opportunity for grief and reflection amidst yearnings for connection, forgiveness, and peace. Under normal circumstances, this would be a very emotional time. How much more so when the entire world around me is suffering and can offer little solace. Now everything has blown up in our faces. Any illusion about the strength and security of the previously impenetrable United States of America is shattered. Thousands of innocent lives have been lost, and mom is dead. There were further challenges to a normal grieving process. The grounding of all air travel made it impossible to transport the living, as well as mom's body, from California to the site of her final resting place in Columbia, South Carolina. Furthermore, when the funeral was delayed by these logistical issues, it toppled the traditional mourning practices. Following a precedent established in wartime, we ended up conducting Shuvah before mom was laid to rest. And with travel still feeling risky for some, we were later forced to have a virtual funeral using a relatively primitive mobile phone conference call. Worst of all, the grief and confusion of the week gave rise to some heated conversations between me and my brother Jeff as we attempted to navigate through these emotional and uncharted waters. As an aside, there's a bitter irony that we're now living in days all too reminiscent of 2001. Not only has the tragedy of Afghanistan come to the fore, but also for many people across the world, COVID has made it difficult or impossible for them to properly convene with loved ones for time-honored mourning rituals, as well as more joyous life cycle events. While that week of grief, confusion, and anger was a focal point for me and my family in 2001, it by no means defined our year of preparing for and responding to mom's death. The months preceding her demise were filled with loving and inspiring conversations. A profound sense of her spirituality came forth, something that was largely hidden from us in all her prior years. After her death, a process of reconciliation followed the initial quarreling, aided by Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and reflecting a familial love that withstood the trials of those difficult days. Despite the bittersweet memories of 2001, this week, 20 years later, has brought me great joy. It's with relief and satisfaction that I've completed the self-assigned task of documenting my reflections on those times. I've had the pleasure of holding this book in my hand for the first time. And above all, it's with tremendous gratitude that on this Shabbat of mom's yahrzeit, I and my sister and brother-in-law can join the congregation to which mom devoted herself for decades. And moreover, I've had this honor to speak virtually from the pulpit, which my father briefly occupied nearly 50 years ago. As enjoyable as these tangible outcomes may be, they pale in comparison to the rich rewards of engaging in the process of reflection, essentially a process of Shuvah that led to all this. To tell this story, I was challenged to do some serious self-evaluation. The term we use for this, especially in this season, is cheshbon hanefesh, an accounting of the soul. It demands honesty, compassion, and forgiveness. Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, in his revolutionary book, From Aging to Saging, suggested that we reflect on harsh experiences of the past, that when we do that with increased wisdom from years of life experience, we can bring empathy and understanding to situations and to the individuals we remember, including ourselves. We can examine how certain events that seemed terrible at the time may have taught us important lessons or led us down more pleasant and unexpected paths. Or we can simply exercise compassion and grant forgiveness. I've taken a long look at my interactions with my brother, who was a congregational rabbi in Florida back in 2001. We bumped heads over a few issues, primarily when to begin Shuvah and when to conduct the funeral. In retrospect, these were probably just some misplaced emotions looking for a convenient target. 20 years has given me some perspective. As I was developing the book, a mentor encouraged me to engage in a creative exercise in which I imagined what a more productive conversation between Jeff and me might have sounded like back then. If Jeff had had the capacity to effectively articulate his feelings and I had had the forbearance to hear him, we both owned a piece of the conflict. In my exercise, I imagined my brother describing his sadness and fears, the burden of tending to his distraught congregation, his anxiety about the upcoming high holy days and about a new job he was moving to. In my imagination, he concluded with these words: I'm practically numb because I can't bear the thought of actually feeling what I'm feeling. It's such a combination of remorse, anger, grief, and fear that I'm shutting it all off as much as I can. I don't like all the demands that are being placed upon me from many directions, including from you. So I'm asking you, brother, to cut me some slack. Just give me a little rachmanis, a little compassion. Just imagining what Jeff might have said to me was powerful and transformative. 20 years after we argued and 10 years after his untimely death, I still find it very useful to empathize with him and to appreciate his perspective. I've done similar work with my mom. It may seem odd to do the work of Shuvah with those who are long gone, but as Maury Schwartz was quoted as saying in the book Tuesdays with Maury, death ends a life, not a relationship. Forgiving the departed was healing for me, and I have to believe that it enhances my connection with the living as well. This week's Haftarah contains these words from the prophet Micah. God does not maintain God's anger forever because God delights in loving kindness. God does not maintain God's anger forever because God delights in loving kindness. Then, using a form of the word Shuvah, Micah says, Yashuv Yerachamenu, God shall return and grant us compassion. See, even God performs Shuvah, returning to God's best self. Let 5782 be for us a year in which we look at our lives now as well as from earlier days, and let us be more godlike. Let us not maintain our anger forever, but let us take delight in bestowing loving kindness and in granting compassion to others and to ourselves. Shabbat Shalom and Gemar Tov.